Since Generation 1, Pokemon has premiered its main series games with 2 versions. One of the main differences between titles in the same generation are version-exclusive Pokemon. And while Big Pikachu wants these version-exclusive Pokemon to be distinct enough to compel you to buy both games and catch them all, it also wants them to be similar enough that people can still compare in-game playthroughs regardless of which games they chose. That way, you, as a sophisticated Pokemon Scarlet player, can talk with a lowly Pokemon Violet player about your single-player experiences without anyone feeling left out. To achieve this delicate balance, version-exclusive rival Pokemon generally share the same evolutionary progression to be parallel to one another in-game, while having similar yet distinct traits that lead to them having, you guessed it, similar yet distinct roles in competitive. In Pokemon VGC, the official competitive battling format for tournaments fought in double battles, players are extremely precise in the Pokemon they choose to use on their team of 6. As a result, these small differences between rivals can lead to one overshadowing the other for generations at a time in competitive. One example of this relationship is Magmar and Electabuzz. First appearing in Pokemon Red and Blue as version-exclusive rivals, they're basically fire and electric mirror images, sharing the same defensive stats and evolutionary progressions. In terms of competitive results though, for a long time it couldn't have been a more one-sided rivalry. In 2013, Magmar came out of nowhere to nearly win the highest honor in competitive Pokemon, the VGC World Championships. Seijin Park, famous for his World Championship win in the following year with Pachirisu, placed 5th place here with another out-of-left-field pick in Magmar, while a young Wolf Glick made top 32 with it. Its rival Electabuzz, on the other hand, hadn't had a single top finish at a regional or national, let alone Worlds, in the 10 years following Magmar's big finish. That's why it was so surprising that at the 2024 North American International Championships, over 25 years after its introduction in Red and Blue, Electabuzz finally had its breakout tournament. But before we get to that, to better understand Electabuzz's recent success, I think it's worth explaining how Magmar, an unassuming, not fully evolved Pokemon, was good enough to excel at the World Championships in 2013 in the first place. At the time, Worlds was played in the Generation 5 games. One thing you need to know about Gen 5 was that the Dragon type was king. In future games, Fairy type was introduced as Dragon's only defensive immunity and served as a massive nerf to the typing. Before then though, Dragon types only had 1 resistance and no immunities. I'm not exaggerating when I say entire formats revolved around surviving moves like Dragon Gem Draco Meteor from Latios. It was extremely overpowered. While Dragon types were the most important Pokemon in Gen 5, Steel types, as the only Pokemon that resisted Dragon types, became the second most valuable Pokemon in competitive. Many common Steel types, like Metagross, had strong secondary typing to remove weaknesses to fighting, as well as generally high defense stats to survive the most popular ground type attack at the time, Earthquake, which was a physical move. That left fire moves, specifically special ones, as one of the few ways to quickly KO Steel types. Special fire coverage became so important that in Gen 5, both divisions of the 2012 US National Championships were won by offensive Hidden Power Fire Cresselia. Despite its pitiful special attack stat, this take on Cresselia in 2012 found success largely due to how defensively frail actual fire-type Pokemon were. Heatran and Volcarona were seen as the strongest fire types, but both had very common quad weaknesses to moves like Earthquake and Rock Slide that made them easier to win at KO before they could get an attack off against your opponent's Steel-type Pokemon. Ray Rizzo took advantage of this to win Worlds in 2012 with a team that could readily knock out fire types before bringing out his Steel-type Metagross. In 2013, top players were desperate to find a fire type that could survive battle long enough to actually threaten Steel types consistently. Wolf Glick and Seijin Park, both looking to improve on their respective 2012 finishes of 2nd and 5th place, converged on a Pokemon for Worlds 2013 that could solve the Steel type problem. A Pokemon that, despite being available since the start of 2012, had been completely overlooked in tournaments until then. That Pokemon was Magmar. Despite its modest base stats, with the Eviolite item, as a not fully evolved Pokemon, Magmar could boost its defenses to legendary status. To offset its low special attacking stat, it used Helping Hand to increase its partner's damage output, and took advantage of strong special fire-type moves like Overheat to score knockouts on Steel types. While these were solid tools, they weren't what caught Seijin and Wolf's attention. No, it was Magmar's access to Follow Me. Follow Me is a useless move in single battles, but in double battles, it forces your opponent's single target moves to redirect into the user of Follow Me, leaving your partner free to attack or set up. Follow Me is so broken that a Pokemon with Follow Me or Rage Powder, a Follow Me clone that doesn't affect Grass-type Pokemon post-Gen 5, has top cut Worlds 10 times out of the 12 World Championships since I started competing in 2010. This move is balanced by its limited distribution, and in terms of bulk, the best you could do in 2013 were things like Togekiss and Amoonguss, which could be bulky, but frankly, don't hold a candle to Magmar. Additionally, Magmar's ability Flame Body has a 30% chance to inflict burn on any Pokemon that hit it with a contact move. which happens pretty frequently when you're clicking follow me most turns. In this generation, burn still did 1/8 of your total HP every turn, and most importantly, halves the target's physical damage output. Combine that with an extremely useful support move in Will-O-Wisp to burn physical attackers using non-contact spread moves like Tyranitar's Rock Slide, along with Magmar's other strengths, and Sajin and Wolf were onto something special. Now zooming out a bit, Magmar had been legal since the start of VGC 2012, and although it gained Helping Hand in Black and White 2, it had access to the rest of its tools throughout this entire timeline. Why then, with so much going for it in Generation 5, was it only used at one tournament across 2 years of accessibility and competition? Well, turns out while Follow Me Magmar, Electabuzz, and Mr. Mime for that matter, were all legal in competition, calling them accessible is a bit of a stretch. You see, these Pokemon could only learn Follow Me as a purification move in Pokemon XD, and you'd have to play through most of the game to have a chance to catch one. While catching any of these Pokemon was trivial, without the modern Naturement and Bottle Cap items to alter a caught Pokemon's otherwise set nature and IVs for competition, obtaining a Follow Me Magmar with tournament viable stats that wouldn't put you at a disadvantage was extremely time intensive, and for most, not worth the effort. However, both Sajin and Wolf identified it as the right call for their teams and made the effort to get them for competition. On Sajin's team, it was the perfect choice to Follow Me away attacks while his partner set up Trick Room, a move that reverses the order of speed for the next 4 turns. In Trick Room, Magmar could use Helping Hand to boost Jellicent's Water Spouts and Abomasnow's Blizzards, as well as use fire moves on any grass or steel types trying to resist Jellicent and Abomasnow's spread moves, respectively. It was an incredibly potent strategy that Sajin piloted to a 5th place finish at Worlds that year. And on Wolf's team... Look, I'll be honest, I don't really know what it was doing, and by his account he doesn't really seem to know either. The goal seemed to be redirecting attention from his bulky Pokemon so they could inflict his opponents with status and slowly win the game that way, and while I have no doubt it worked in practice, it failed to bring Wolf back to the finals of Worlds, where he'd been in 2012. Bringing things back to Magmar's rival Electabuzz though, it is worth noting that Electabuzz also got Follow Me, the same defensive stats as Magmar, and another strong ability in Static, which is basically Flame Body but inflicting paralysis. However, it was Magmar's specific role as a bulky Fire-type support in 2013 that let it burn bright here. In contrast, players interested in a bulky Electric-type support needed to look no further than Thundurus, the 3rd most used Pokemon at Worlds that year for... pretty good reasons. After its 5th place finish at Worlds 2013, Magmar stocks were way up, and as a starry-eyed 15-year-old at the time, I was excited to see how people would find new ways to incorporate it and Electabuzz onto their teams. Unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. Heatran with Eruption, only obtainable through a brief Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs Wi-Fi event, dominated Worlds that year, causing Pokemon to ban event or pass game exclusive moves in all future years of VGC competitions. To be clear, I think this was a positive change for player accessibility, since it'd be ridiculous to require players to buy every game in the series to maintain a level playing field. Right? Anyways, the unfortunate consequence of this was that Magmar and Electabuzz's strongest tool in competitive play was locked away from them. This was sad for Magmar, who had a chance to become a competitive mainstay, but it was especially tragic for Electabuzz, who never got its chance to shine. Flash forward over 10 years, and the Magmar and Electabuzz lines had just returned to Pokemon Scarlet Violet through the DLC. Few thought anything of it until someone noticed that they'd both been given Follow Me as egg moves. Remembering its success at Worlds, the community celebrated Magmar's return, caught and trained it so they could finally compete with it again, and... it did not go well. After a decade of new Pokemon and mechanics, Magmar had been power crept out of relevance. Follow Me Fire-type was no longer a unique role. Now, it faced fierce competition from Ogerpon Hearthflame, which could also sweep teams with Terrafire and Body Aspect boosted Ivy Cudgels. And if you wanted a more defensive Fire-type redirector, Volcarona, which Magmar found a use case over in 2013 due to its ability to survive rock slides, was way better positioned now since rock-type coverage moves had become fairly uncommon. Magmar has had some usage from players that still just want the bulk advantage over Volcarona, but it's been a far cry from a triumphant return. In spite of all the hype, Magmar's return was regarded as a complete flameout. Months later, the 2024 North American International Championships were fast approaching, and an international champion was seen laddering with Electabuzz. Most people pass this off as a joke, since top players will oftentimes see how well they can do with a cheesy, kinda bad Pokemon just for the challenge of it. However, a small group of players saw this and realized Electabuzz could be the spark that they needed to make a strong idea they already had broken. If you aren't familiar with team building for Pokemon tournaments, players will often find a solid team of 5 and then are stumped on how to beat a problem Pokemon or two that they just can't crack. The team building obstacle of finding the perfect sixth that solves all the problems of the team has been around for as long as I can remember. Few people ever find the perfect sixth, and the few that do are forever immortalized. At the 2024 North American International Championships, Alex Underhill and Aditya Subramanian brought Electabuzz on their teams in its competitive debut, and it did not disappoint. Both players crushed the competition on the first day, going a collective 15 wins and 3 losses, with Alex ultimately finishing 12th out of nearly 1,000 players and Adi finishing 60th. Interestingly enough, Alex actually beat Wolf, one of the original Magmar players, with Electabuzz during the second day of competition, really bringing things full circle. They used an aggressive Trick Room team with a number of crazy details like Slow Decorate Smeargle to boost Sweeper's offensive stats by 2 stages, and Choice Scarf Max HP Annihilate to turn 1 Final Gambit, dealing massive damage while knocking itself out, providing a safe switch into a Sweeper on the first active turn of Trick Room. Despite all of that, Electabuzz was still the talk of the town on social media, its high voltage hijinks finally outshining Magmar for the first time since its big break in 2013. Now I want to make it clear, Alex and Adi didn't play Electabuzz just for fun. It was fun, but it was there as the perfect sixth on their team. You see, Trick Room teams are very powerful, since they can make use of Pokemon with extremely high base stats that are normally overlooked due to their low speed stats. By reversing the order of speed with Trick Room, these Pokemon now move first, ignoring their greatest weakness and breaking the game. Because Trick Room is so powerful, most competitive teams have answers to it. One common way to beat Trick Room teams is by using a slow Amoonguss, which can use its Spore to move before Trick Room Sweepers and put them asleep, wasting turns of Trick Room. This strategy is very deadly and often requires safety goggles or Terra Grass to be immune to Spore. However, believe it or not, Electabuzz is a catch-all answer for Spore Amoonguss. With the Vital Spirit ability, Electabuzz is immune to the sleep status condition, allowing it to safely switch in while its partner protects, tank a hit with its Eviolite, then follow me the next turn to neutralize the threat of Spore. This frees up the devastatingly strong Calyrex Ice Rider and Ursaluna Blood Moon to freely attack and take KOs without needing to commit to anti-Spore items or Grass defensive terrestrialization in front of Amoonguss. The most common Trick Room counterplay of all though is Protect. Protect is the best move in competitive Pokemon, partially because of how effective it is at stalling out field effects like Trick Room. Once Trick Room begins, opponents can stall a turn of Trick Room by protecting both of their Pokemon to avoid damage or status. If an opponent is able to double protect another time in the battle, it effectively only gives the Trick Room user 2 turns out of the original 4 to do damage. They can also use Wide Guard or Protect variant with one Pokemon in front of Calyrex, since its main form of damage is the spread move Glacial Lance, freeing up their own partner to attack or reverse Trick Room. Protect's widespread usage is part of why Trick Room teams don't typically succeed at the highest level. But wouldn't you know it, Electabuzz has an answer for that too. By using the move Feint, Electabuzz breaks through Protect and Wide Guard, allowing Calyrex and Ursaluna to hit the feinted target and take KOs, preventing opponents from surviving their Trick Room turns. The last major anti-Trick Room strategy in competitive is to taunt the Trick Room setter. Fortunately, Electabuzz has multiple answers for that one. Like Seijen's Magmar in 2013, it can follow me away the taunt while your partner sets up Trick Room, and this time, instead of losing valuable Trick Room turns with a supporter on the field, you're free to Volt Switch into a Sweeper to preserve momentum. One other tool Electabuzz has is its own taunt, which coming off its base 105 speed stat allows it to outspeed the most common taunt user in the format, Incineroar, and taunt it yourself, allowing for a safe Trick Room setup while leaving your opponent feeling pretty silly. Now, Vital Spirit Follow Me isn't a combination unique to Electabuzz, but just like Seijen's Magmar in 2013, the little differences between rivals with similar roles make a big difference here, with Electabuzz's access to Feint, Volt Switch, and Taunt making it the perfect Pokemon for Alex and Adi's team. It's actually kind of wild how similar this team is to Seijen's 5th at Worlds Magmar team. They both have Ice and Ground type sweeping cores, Fake Out immune Trick Room users, Disruptive and Threatening Fake Out, fast, defiant lead mix-ups, and of course, overlooked Follow Me supporters that proved everyone that doubted them wrong as the perfect 6th, Magmar and Electabuzz. It's a rare and exciting event for a Pokemon with no history of competitive success to fit the precise niche needed to make a good team great enough to excel in competition. In 2013, 15 quiet years after its introduction in Pokemon Red and Blue, Magmar found its place in VGC history, and after a decade of living under Magmar's shadow, Electabuzz has finally earned its own legacy. Now that it has that first finish, I'm hopeful other players will keep finding uses for Electabuzz and Magmar's toolkits and continue to build on the story of their unique rivalry. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know which old forgotten Pokemon you think has a chance to pop off in competition in the near future. Also, Alex and Adi released an in-depth overview of the team and their tournament runs with it, so definitely check that out. I'll have that in the description below. Peace, y'all.